My name is Lauren Monaghan-Pisano, and I'm Director of Strategy and Partnerships here at English National Opera. I am a white woman in my early 40s, not my mid-30s, which is what I said earlier, and I have medium length, well, short brown hair, and my pronouns are she, her. So it is a huge pleasure to welcome you here today, whether you're in the room at the London Coliseum or whether you're joining us via our live stream on the University of Surrey's YouTube channel. And we're very delighted that you've joined us here for this conversation on inclusivity and opera. So I'd like to say a huge thank you to our co-hosts, the Theatrical Voice Research Centre at the University of Surrey and Dr. Barbara Gentili, as well as John Warburton. They have worked with us to co-create this event and provided the technology for our live stream today, and they have been a real joy to work with, so thank you so much. I'd also like to thank Black Lives in Music and Carol Leeming, who will be chairing our panel discussion later this afternoon, as well as our speakers from opera companies across England, Wales and Italy. So today marks the first of a public conversation that ENO is hosting about the topic of inclusivity in opera, and we hope that it will be the first of many. It's important to say that this is not a new conversation. There are colleagues in the sector who have been talking about this for a very long time, and those conversations have taken many different forms. But until we see genuine structural change in our sector in terms of who is represented in our companies from the very top to the bottom, and we see genuine representation in who is making and experiencing our work, it is a conversation that we will need to keep on having. And it is very critical to the future of our art form. So this event today is part of ENO's broader strategy to make opera more inclusive as an industry and more representative of the society in which we live today. So we hope that by coming together... Am I still on? Great, thank you. We hope that by coming together with other opera companies and sharing the brilliant work that they are doing in this space, we will be able to collectively learn from that excellent practice and move forward and make progress in this space. So this event is split into two parts. The first is we're going to have a talk from Barbara Gentili and Alexandra Wilson, and that part of the afternoon is a historical look at the notion of inclusivity in opera in the 20th century. And then we're going to move on to, we'll have a short break, and then we'll move on to the second part, which is looking at the ideas of inclusivity in opera through a contemporary lens. There'll be a chance to ask questions of as the audience, both after each of the talks and at the end of the panel discussion. And we hope that you'll all join us for drinks at the end of the day to have more chats. So, boring housekeeping, boring but important. So as you're aware, this event is being live streamed and it's also being photographed. If you don't want to be featured on the live stream or in our photographs, please could you make yourselves known to a member of staff and we'll give you a sticker so that we don't include you in any of the visuals. If we have a fire alarm, our wonderful access supervisor, Kizzy, can support you if you need to leave the building step-free. And then if you can walk, we will use the stairs, but the ENO staff will tell you what to do. There are toilets to my right. We're not going to use these during the event, so if you need to use the toilet, you can go down via the lift or the stairs to use the toilet down on one level. I think that's everything. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Barbara Gentili. She is an opera singer and music historian based at the University of Surrey and our co-host for this afternoon.
Very much, Lauren, for this wonderful introduction. I'm so pleased to be here with so many of you in the audience, and you might have noticed that under your seat there are post-it notes and a pen, and that is for you to use if you want in answer to this question: how has today's event changed your opinion about the ways in which opera has engaged with communities? You can do it as during the talks, or at the interval, or at the end of the event, and just leave the notes where you found it. We will collect it and use it for further studies. Now, I would like to use some notes and to take you on a journey into Italy's recent operatic history. The people I interviewed over the past 10 months are still active contributors to this history, but questions I ask them look into their past, thus the time frame for my talk. My pursuit is to understand the place, the relevance, or the irrelevance of opera in Italian society during these decades. So stay with me as we cross paths with people who experienced opera in many different ways, bringing a part of themselves into the experience. Before we start, I would like to treat you to some singing. This is it.
Salut, demeure chaste pure. Salut, demeure chaste pure. Où se devine la présence d'une âme innocente et divine. Salut, salut, demeure chaste pure. Qui se devine la présence d'une âme innocente.
Yeah, isn't it? So this was, let me just take, this was Angelo Zanotti, who lives, he was 86 at the time of this video, made last year. He lives in Casa Verdi, the home for retired musicians created by Giuseppe Verdi in Milan at the end of the 19th century. Verdi, whose many philanthropic initiatives were well hidden, left all the copyrights from his operas and other sources of income to Casa Verdi. The money has been invested throughout the decades, and with the addition of private donations, forms the capital of Fondazione Verdi, which is a private company. Verdi considered this home as l'opera mia più bella, my most beautiful opera. Angelo Zanotti, here he is in this picture, was born into a working class family in the Val Trompia, a valley in the province of Brescia, in the north of Italy. He tells me his family was financially okay because all the children worked. He started working aged 14 at the end of compulsory school, but he was a talented footballer and ended up in the under-16 national football team, although a bad injury terminated his career as a professional player. When I asked him how opera entered his life, he launches off on a dazzling narrative about his mom and her love for singing. Angelo's mom was a housewife and a fervent fan of Beniamino Gigli, one of the greatest opera celebrities on earth at that time. In the home, she would sing opera excerpts from Gigli's repertoire, so she sang tenor arias and tenor part in duets, and not music suited to her voice type. Angelo's mom's fanaticism for Gigli prompted her to rather epic enterprises. When the Tena performed at the Arena di Verona, an open-air space for summer opera season still functioning today, she would cycle in company of two girlfriends all the 80 kilometers, circa 50 miles, from Villa Calcina, the village where they lived, to Verona. After the performance, the three ladies would sleep in the fields and cycle back home the following morning. We are in the 1940s, a time when women in Italy were supposed to stay at home and look after the family. So the unescorted peregrinations of these three women rose more than one eyebrow in the village. Anyway, Angelo continues, my father, in order to discourage my mom's operatic adventures, decided to buy a gramophone. At this point, the gramophone and the discs of Beniamino Gigli entered the Zanotti family home. Angelo tells me, my mom would play these recordings all the time and sing along. I learned from her, and she was right to practice every day. It is the only way to maintain a flexible and healthy voice. This is an astonishing assertion about a busy housewife. Here, in a sudden and rather abrupt turn of the conversation, it is Angelo as a singer who speaks to me. From his point of view, his mom, a housewife, practiced every day, like she had to perform a role or train for a diploma. Why does he see this that way? Because singing has become the way he makes sense of life. Singing had always been with him since his teens. This man, whose childhood dream was to become a professional footballer, found himself immersed in the sound world of opera all the time, at home with his mom, in the football team bus, where during the journeys from one football pitch to the next, his pulse would urge him to sing opera arias. At the local osteria, the Italian version of the pub, where his dad would put him on a table, age 7, to entertain his comrade with La Donna Immobile from Rigoletto. The sheer misery of post-war Italy forced Angelo to emigrate to Switzerland, where he worked in a factory as an expert milling machine operator. You can see him here. But in one of life's unpredictable turns, he ended up at the Geneva Conservatoire, where he studied under the accomplished Italian singer Anna Maria Guglielmetti. They are practicing in this other picture. Once ready, when his voice was fully trained, he returned to Italy. And in 1967, he qualified for the final round of Aslico, an international competition for young singers still running today. This final round took place at La Scala, where Mario Del Monaco and Giacinto Prandelli, two of the greatest tenors of the second half of the 20th century, happened to sit on the jurors' panel. The two singers liked him. From this point onwards, Angelo's narrative is filled with episodes about the long-lasting friendships he entertained with these two giants of opera singing. They continued to prepare Angelo with free singing tuitions, provided professional opportunities, and even lent money to him. Angelo played Cassio here to the many, in many occasions to the Otello of Mario del Monaco. When he greets me, visibly moved and tired, and is not alone, he asks me, in case I use interview material from my papers, to please remember the good that Mario and Del Monaco and Giacinto Prandelli did to him. So I'm reporting on that good today. There would be so much to say about the guests of Casa Verdi and the quality of information they are able to pass on about the relationship between Italians and opera from the post-war years to our day. But I picked Angelo's story because it contributes a different narrative. It gives a voice to the people who have been traditionally excluded from the official history of opera, a history that has been too often exclusively associated with the political, cultural, and financial power of the social elites. But let's continue our journey by traveling south from Milan to Parma, a delightful city of the Emilia-Romagna region, universally known for its prosciutto and its Parmesan cheese. The relationship between the people of Parma and their opera house, the Teatro Regio, is multifaceted. These interactions run deep in the fabric of society, as the inhabitants of Parma have participated in the life of the theatre in a variety of forms. As audiences, especially those sections sitting in the Loggione, the upper gallery, which feel the experience of a night at the opera with their overwhelming passion for the art form, they participated as single individuals who volunteered to fill a number of stage professions, thus allowing the opera house to function, and as non-professional members of the opera house's chorus. I will start from this latter element. For many decades, up until the year 2000, the chorus of the Teatro Regio was formed by a mix of professional and semi-professional singers. The latter category was trained and sourced through the Corale Verdi, a local amateur group created in 1905, 4 years after the death of Giuseppe Verdi, and still active today. The Corale has nurtured operatic musical culture for well over a century. But as I mentioned, the main link between the Corale, Verdi and the Opera House consisted, as Laura Faelli and various other members of the Corale told me, in supplying singers for the chorus of the Teatro Regio. The Corale was the chief source of the Opera House's chorus. Who were these members of the Corale who transited into the chorus of the Teatro Regio? They were people with a day job. I interviewed electricians, factory workers, union representatives, and school teachers. They would take part in theater rehearsals, mostly in the evening, tells me Laura, because we all worked. This system came abruptly to an end in the year 2000, when, probably in preparation of the Verdi's celebrations of 2001, political perspectives and cultural sensitivities changed, and an entirely professional chorus made up of members selected through international auditions was brought in. And as the members of the Corale, this produced the expulsion, kicking out of the old chorus. A similar fluidity mixing professionals and amateurs was shared with other professions within the theatre. Valerio Cervetti, a member of the Club of the 27th, on which I will return, Valerio calls this mixing of professional and amateur elements high-quality dilettantism. I will skip on Valerio's biographical details to focus on what he told me about the Teatro Regio. A peculiarity of the Teatro Regio was this high-quality dilettantism of a theatre where the professional level is not as high as at La Scala or Turin or at the Teatro Comunale in Florence. But there is such a passion for what is done that it communicates to the audience. I call them dilettanti because they were not paid for what they did inside the opera house, but these people knew what they were doing. There was a mix between volunteers and professionals. For instance, the stage manager, who is the person who tells singers when to enter the stage and from where, among many other things, had a different job. He was a carpenter during the day, who turned into a stage manager in the evening. I think this was a real strength of the theatre, and it is sad that this tradition has been lost. But Valerio reports on audience behavior. Parma is famous or infamous in Italy and elsewhere for the fervent reactions of its audiences, which brings me to the last item on my list, audience participation. I turn now to the testimonies of two other members of the Club of the 27. What is the Club of the 27? It's an association of 27 opera lovers. Each of them takes the nickname of one of Giuseppe Verdi's opera. Each member has a seat in a sort of circle which surrounds the bust of Verdi. They meet weekly for collective listening, for in-depth discussions of Verdi's opera librettos and the historical background to each opera. They organize concerts, even within the program of the Festival Verdi, about which Francesco Izzo, one of our guests, will talk later. And they support young singers and run a Verdi Prize for school children every year. The prize is sitting in the royal box of the Teatro Regio for one performance. Yeah. Nicandro Gelati, Nicandro, is one of the most senior members of the club. He shares his first memory of attending opera performances at the Teatro Regio. Together with his elderly cousin, he would cycle to Parma from Roma di Madregolo, a village some 10 kilometers away from the city, so nothing compared to the distance cycled by the mum of Angelo Zanotti. He often endured a 48-hour queue to get the cheapest tickets for the Loggione, the upper gallery. When the singer was an absolute celebrity, such as Franco Corelli, who appeared in 1967 in La Forza del Destino, the queue could start as early as 6 days before the performance. Gelati describes the rituals of queuing outside the theatre. So well-known characters would take charge of the queue. The fires would be lit with wooden boxes left over from the street market of the day to warm up the freezing sit-ins during the night. He tells me, at a certain point, the theater management took pity on us and decided to open the theater ground floor atrium so that we could wait inside, not under the rain or in the snow. Once the doors to the Loggione were open, the queuing crowd, a number ticket in hand, because the seats were not numbered, would rush up to the stairs in order to secure the best seats. Let us dig a bit on the actual aesthetic experience of these people who were listening to the performance from the cheapest and most uncomfortable seats in the house. Giuseppe Amenta, another member of the club of the 27, sat in the Loggione for the first time in 1965, aged 18, for a performance of Verdi's Hernani with American baritone Corner McNeil. Giuseppe emigrated to Parma from Matera, the deep south of Italy, at 13. For 3 years he trained as a nurse while working in a glass factory. As soon as he started working as a nurse, he could finally afford his first Loggione ticket, after having duly queued for it, of course. He describes me the Logionista's behavior, the person who sits in the Loggione. The Logionista have no pretensions to watch the show. They stand at the back of the gallery and comes forward now and then just to glance at the stage. Logionistas listen. For the true hard Logionistas I met, attending an operatic performance meant essentially listening. So, I comment, but what about the acting, the visual element, the drama? He replies wittingly, but they felt it in the voice. They, the Logionistas, listen standing up for the entire duration of the opera while expressing their verdicts. Giuseppe mimics them. He or she, referring to the singer on stage, should have done this. There, he should have done that. And, he tells me, we are talking of people with no education, but very well prepared on the dramatic content of the opera and with a fantastically well-trained ear. But I object again. What were the criteria of their verdicts? He replies again with his knowing smile. Verdicts were based on what they heard great singers do in previous occasions, and they had listened to a lot of great singers. As we go deeper into the argument, Maria Callas, Renata Tebaldi, Mario del Monaco, and again Alfredo Kraus, Franco Corelli, Carlo Bergonzi, all the great singers of the past are named. As a historian of singing and singers, I'm intrigued. What did the Logionista, this ultimate opera lover, discuss back in the days when they engaged in their heated conversation about the merits and flaws of great opera singers? To shed some light on this, I need to go back to Nicandro's testimony. Nicandro loved two tenors, Alfredo Kraus and Carlo Bergonzi. He listened to all of Bergonzi's performances at the Teatro Regio until Bergonzi stopped appearing there after he was booed in Aida. He was booed because he sang the top B flat of Celeste Aida, the first aria of Radames in Act 1, pianissimo, using a soft sound, a falsettone, a sort of head voice, which is exactly what Verdi prescribed the singer to do on the score, but it is not what tenors have been doing. The tradition, in fact, is to sing a crescendo to fortissimo on that B flat, thus intensifying the volume of the voice to its maximum power. Bergonzi, comments my interviewee Nicandro, did not have the top notes of a Corelli or the ringing quality, the metallic resonance of a del Monaco. But for me, when he interpreted Verdi's role, for me, it was unsurpassable. Nicandro also expatiates on Alfredo Kraus. Kraus's Werther, referring to the opera by Massenet, was a made-to-measure suit. He entered the character, and when somebody who did not like him criticized him, then arguments would arise. Based on the material I assembled during these early stages of my research, it seems to me that Logionista were discussing something that has been at the heart of operatic culture for a very long time. The quality of individual singers' voice, Corelli's shining top notes, Del Monaco's ringing tone, and singers' ability to use their voice to create words of enhanced human experience, Kraus's made-to-measure Werther. These discourses about singers and about voice have been in circulation since the inception of the art form until very recently. To conclude, my interviewees provide a quite unusual account of operatic life in Italy, but one which I suspect resonates with other parts of the world, since for centuries opera has been a global art form, which relies on similar systems of production and consumption. But Alexandra Wilson will shortly tell us more about this and the British landscape after myself. My interviewees have constantly co-produced operatic culture, and their presence has been as vital and perhaps more vital than that of patrons, critics, and educated elites. After debating on the virtues and defects of their favorite singers, Logionistas ate Parma's fantastic cold cuts and Parmesan's cheese while drinking wine from the region del Lambrusco in the halls behind the Logione during the intervals, which were more than one. What a feast that must have been. Heated discussion on subjects that mattered to them did not erase their ability to be together as a community, sharing the food that they all brought from home. Perhaps there is more than one lesson to be learned here about the inclusivity of opera. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Barbara. That was a really fascinating talk. So now is your chance, audience. Do you have any questions for Barbara? Don't all go at once. Sally, can I give you the mic, Sally? Thanks.
Hello, Barbara. Thank you for that very entertaining and interesting talk. Can you tell us how many singers did you speak to in the Casa da Verdi about their experiences?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the question, Sally. It was, I talked to around 13 people. Most of them are from working class background or low, what I could define as lower middle class. Some of them are really elderly, 93, 94, so their memories go back a long while, especially the ones that, there are some people who have really strong, lucid memories. And they tell you about all sorts of interesting things, what was their relationship to conductors and directors, how it changed. Those were really important years when opera, the way of making opera changed quite a lot from, the opera based on singing and singers and the figure of the celebrity singer to a different conception where the voice was not absolutely central, acting increasingly became more important, and the director vision, of course. But Bianca Maria Casoni, who has been a very international career mezzo-soprano, she worked with Zeffirelli, Estrella, all the great. And she told me that when was about the soloist singer having to do something on stage, Zeffirelli would ask them, would follow them and explain, I will place you here. Could you sit? Are you comfortable if you sit? Or do you prefer hold a different position? So they were extremely attentive to the profession and the artistry of the singer. And she complained that was changing a lot towards the end of her career. That's just one particular detail.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Hi. Just a question about the Logionista. Did you ask them about any new operas that came and how they reacted to any new works that came into the theatre?
I didn't ask, but thanks for the question. Very interesting question. I didn't ask, but they wanted to tell me. And let's say that it's a mixed basket, because you have people who are really interested to everything. They would go to a symphonic concert and they would be eager to listen to new things. And there are people who are really conservative and they would go and listen just because they would go and listen to everything. So there was the new thing, they would go, but they are quite, their tone is quite, it's not very enthusiastic, let's put it that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We probably have time for one last question, if we have one.
I believe you spoke to an American singer who started her career in, I think was born in Detroit or somewhere, and then travelled to Italy to study and ended up singing Luigi Nono or something like that. And
Mary Lindsay.
yeah.
Mary
Maybe you could
Lindsay.
say a bit about her.
Mary Lindsay, yeah, she's an American black singer from Detroit, and she had this amazing career singing contemporary operas mainly, associated herself with the greatest Italian contemporary contemporary opera composers. And oh my gosh, she's so gracious. And she also taught at the Conservatoire in Brescia. Well, of course, it's another mindset. Her idea of operatic repertoire is far more flexible, and heterogeneous as compared to what an Italian singer, let's say, from 80 and 90-year-old can think about opera. So it's a different outlook. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I couldn't really. I mean, I would have loved to have all the singers from Casa Verdi in this talk, but it really wasn't a possibility.
Thank you, Barbara. There's so much to explore there, and we can continue the conversation in the break and hopefully also at the drinks at the end. So can we thank Barbara again for a really wonderful talk?